stargazing scientists at NASA are confident that within the next few decades, humans will discover the very first signs of extraterrestrial life. Yet some believe it's entirely possible alien craft have already visited Earth.
Large black flying object. Hey, calm down, calm down.
But extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. In this series, I'm going to investigate some of the most remarkable and recent UFO sightings from around the world. They saw something really strange in the sky that day. And I'll be joined by renowned astrophysicist and space journalist, Sarah Crudders.
The thing is, with something so extraordinary like this, we've got to look at all the more logical explanations. I still think this can be explained by science.
As together, we'll separate fact from fiction once and for all. That is an unidentified flying object.
I knew you were going to say that, and yes, it is. It's one of the greatest UFO mysteries of all time.
From our specially created UFO investigation hub, we'll speak to experts.
We have no conventional explanation for what we are seeing here.
Whistleblowers.
Anytime you step out of ranks in an organization like mine, there's obviously going to be some repercussions.
And first-hand witnesses.
There was this massive boomerang. It's at least a mile to a mile and a half wide. It was huge.
Wow, that's just spooked me now. And finally answer the big question. Are we alone in the universe? Whatever they are, they're not of this world. On a clear winter's evening in January 2008, a close encounter of an extraordinary kind took place in a small Texan dairy town called Stephenville. It remains one of the most baffling and hair-raising sightings ever recorded. A mile-wide craft was seen hovering overhead by stunned locals before striking away at hypersonic speed. Despite dozens of credible eyewitnesses, including a police officer.
This thing was huge. Clearly not stars, clearly not a helicopter. I'd love to know what it was.
And a pilot.
It wasn't anything that I'd seen before. We all looked at each other. I just asked, are y'all seeing what I'm seeing?
This case remains unexplained. And ex-MOD official Nick Pope was under no illusion about the significance of this extraordinary UFO encounter.
This is hugely credible, yes. What is it? And what was it doing? Who was flying it? Is it Russia? Is it China? Is it extraterrestrials? We're not quite sure what we're dealing with.
Stephenville is a dairy town 100 miles southwest of Dallas, home to 22,000 people. In January 2008, they were settling down for a normal evening when something out of this world happened. Reminiscent of the bizarre Phoenix Lights formations that were witnessed 11 years previously in Arizona, a vast object, estimated to be a mile across, with an arc of burning bright lights that gleamed in the night sky. The ominous object hovered in silence for 5 minutes before shooting away at speeds estimated to be in excess of 3,000 miles per hour.
It was very intense, bright lights. I keep hearing that over and over and over, and they spanned a wide area.
Military officials accused the town of letting their imagination run wild, suggesting what they'd seen was the sun's reflection on 2 airliners.
If you look at the trees, you know, it's right here. I mean, it's 300 foot up, right here.
13 years on, and the people of Stephenville are still desperate for answers. Could the vast UFO that cast a shadow over this small town on the 8th of January 2008 have been extraterrestrial? And has there been a cover-up? Time for Sarah and I to investigate. Got another exciting one for you here, Sarah. Place called Stephenville, 100 miles southwest of Dallas, Texas, a mass sighting. The ship was a mile wide.
A mile wide?
A mile wide. It reached speeds of 3,000 miles per hour. We know this because it was chased by fighter jets. Let's find out more about this story. Immediately following the UFO event, press teams descended on Stephenville. And a news report from the 14th of January 2008, 6 days after the sighting, captures the mood of the town.
Stephenville, Texas is a typical American small town. The folks here are proud of their high school's football team and proud to be the #1 dairy county in the state. Stephenville may be typical, but what's happening in the skies above it is a whole nother story. For days, people have been emailing and calling the newsroom saying they've seen a UFO.
It's so fast when it took off, you know, and it made not a sound.
Ricky Sorrells was deer hunting in these woods when he says the UFO stopped and hovered just over his head.
It's right here. I mean, it's 300 foot up, right here.
Sorrells thought about shooting at the object but didn't want to start an interstellar war, so he lowered his gun and hightailed it back to the house.
Right here, right in this direction, right here. I saw it at about 70 degrees up from the horizon.
Jason Lee also saw the object, describing it as brighter than a star and larger. It isn't the first time Lee has seen a UFO.
There it is right there.
In 1995, he took this video of what he says was a flying saucer over his hometown of Cleburne, Texas.
I don't know. I'm not going to say little green men.
Rich Matthews, Stephenville, Texas.
Let's just rewind the video slightly. So this guy, he's already seen one UFO, he thinks there's another one. See this? It's the space shuttle.
That's the space shuttle.
Coming into land. 1990s.
I can't work out what it is, though, from there.
But this guy, he's saying he saw one light, others saying they saw multiple lights. We've got one guy who didn't want to start an interstellar war, but also doesn't know what it is, but he's already made up his mind that it's aliens.
OK, look, it may turn out not to be flying saucers or an alien species. It may turn out to be natural phenomena.
Or aircraft.
Yeah, or aircraft, but we're here to investigate.
That is true, and to be fair, more than 50 people have phoned this in. What I am curious about, though, is whether there's any video evidence or photographic evidence, because the Phoenix Lights, the largest mass sighting ever, that was in 1997, and we had photos from that.
First of all, I want to hear more from Steve. Steve from Stevensville, the pilot.
Yeah, I think we've got a credible witness here, got credibility, used to seeing unusual things in the sky, which he can often explain. We've actually got Steve with us to talk to us now.
OK, let's go to Texas. Experienced private pilot Steve Allen was one of the many eyewitnesses whose life was changed forever. That beautiful Texas winter.
I stepped out of my pickup and I could see some bright, high-intensity lights coming at us at a very high rate of speed. And I said, "Are you guys seeing that?" And they concurred with me and said, "Yes, we're seeing it." And as it came past, it made no noise whatsoever. The ship was massive. It appeared to be about a half a mile wide and probably a mile long. It stops over Stephenville, Texas, which is about 3 or 4 miles from our location. And it had 7 lights across the back, blinking in no particular order. They reconfigured to an arch shape, and then a split second, they've reconfigured to 2 vertical shapes. And then all of a sudden, it burst into a flame. And then it simply disappeared.
Before Steve and his friends could process what they'd seen, the UFO reappeared.
It's coming back by, this time going from east to west, and it had 2 F-16s trailing it. That was when it left back out at 1,900 miles an hour. and the F-16s was going full blast, afterburner coming out the back. They was in hot pursuit.
But having been in the sky so much and so often, have you seen anything that even remotely compares to what you saw that day?
You know, I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. It was a once in a lifetime experience. As the craft went past, that I could feel their presence, and it felt like they could feel my presence. It's hard to describe. I've never had a feeling like that before.
Wow.
That's a great story, but why are there no photographs of it? It was a mass sighting.
A photograph of something running 2,000 miles an hour real close to you would be hard to get, and it happened so quick, and the whole event was somewhere in the 12 to 15 minute area. Plus, at that time was 2008. I have a flip phone at that time, so it was before I moved up in the world.
Did you ask the military what they were doing there?
Carl Lewis, and he denied we didn't have any F-16s in your area at that time.
But on January the 23rd, 12 days later, the military changed its position.
So the reporter calls me up and says, Major Lewis says he was mistaken, that they did have 10 F-16s in the area.
So you're talking they've got billions of dollars worth of hardware in the area, and they forgot that it was there?
I can tell you where my dog's at this time, much less a $200 or $300 million aircraft. So I think from one radar, but we got 6 different radar report backs on it.
We'll look into it, Steve. Thanks for talking to us.
My pleasure. Thank y'all.
Well, there you go. I mean, a vivid account, lovely guy, level-headed.
He's a pilot?
He's a pilot. But unfortunately, there's a lack of evidence. There's no pictures, there's no video.
But this is the challenge with any UFO sighting. People genuinely believe what they see, but there's a lack of hard evidence. Perhaps they're so frozen, so in awe of what they're seeing, that they can't get their phone out to take a photo or a video.
Well, listen, what I found most fascinating was the radar.
Me too. We do need to investigate this.
We certainly do. Let's find later than they publicly declared. You've got the AWAC plane, 10 fighter jets in the area, 2 split off and went to where our unidentified flying object is. Stephenville, Texas. A mile-wide craft, a mothership, witnessed by at least 50 residents who all tell exactly the same story.
It was so fast when it took off, you know, and it made not a sound. You know, it's right here. I mean, it's 300 foot up, right here.
This phenomenal mass sighting is surely one of the most credible in UFO history. We're on a mission to uncover the truth about this extraordinary and still unsolved UFO sighting. Okay, sir, let's look at what we've got. We've got a mass sighting. People describing a vast spaceship traveling at like 3,000 miles per hour. We've got military jets in the sky. 2 peel off, head southwest, as if they were chasing something. We spoke to first-hand witness, pilot Steve Allen, who gave us a vivid description of the UFO.
The ship was massive, and it had 7 lights across the back blinking, and it had two F-16s trailing it with full afterburner in hot pursuit, but they couldn't get close to it.
Having initially denied having any fighter jets in the area, a matter of days later, the United States Air Force changed its story.
Major Lewis says he was mistaken.
Sounds to me like the US Air Force was scrambling in more ways than one. What really fascinated me was the radar data.
Me too.
The key to cracking this case could lie in the radar data from the time of the incident. We need to get hold of those reports.
I've got just the guy for this. His name is Robert Switek. He's from MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network, which has been investigating this case.
Okay. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Craig. Good to see you.
Rob is a highly experienced UFO researcher, and he's investigated the Stephenville sighting extensively. I want to know what he's discovered. Rob, what can you tell us about the story?
Some people saw objects, large lights. Sometimes they hovered, sometimes they moved at extremely high speeds. But the interesting thing about this is that in one of the sightings, the object moved sort of intermittently. Sometimes it would hover, and then it would immediately, within the course of 1 or 2 seconds, accelerate to a speed of 500 miles an hour. And in some cases, it almost hit 2,000, if not more. This object had no transponder on it, so it wasn't a commercial aircraft or an aircraft from the Air Force.
How are you able to calculate the speed if you want there? I mean, you've only got witness accounts.
We got radar returns from the FAA and from the National Weather Service covering the period of time from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on January 8th. MUFON filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the FAA and a number of other civilian organizations in the government, and including the Air Force, too.
Rob, Sarah made a point before. In 2008, everyone had cameras on their phones. How come there's no pictures of this?
The radar data is even maybe better than pictures, since it does show large objects that replicated the motions of what the witnesses reported. In Stephenville, they saw a very large object. The witnesses saw that, and that object was picked up on radar. My understanding is that the radar didn't have the capability of recording the size, so we couldn't get a size of the object. We could get where it was seen and how fast it moved. We got back from the radar information that at the same time as these sightings, we had 10 aircraft, military aircraft, on training exercises at some distance from Stephenville. But on their return to the Stephenville area, 2 of the aircraft deviated right during the time period that this object was being seen, and we don't know why they deviated.
And you think those fighter jets were going to investigate this unknown phenomenon in the sky? It's a reasonable assumption, would you say?
It's an assumption, that's correct, and it's a reasonable assumption. You are right.
Rob, with there being fighter jets in the area, do you think this could have been a secret military craft that they've been working on and they wanted to keep stum?
You could speculate that they did. Also put into the mix was an AWACS, an airborne warning and control aircraft that was orbiting for the entire 4 hours. This AWACS aircraft is going on just an oval course, a racetrack course, they call it.
Well, it was obviously monitoring something.
My reading of it is that the Well, if there was, they haven't informed MUFON. Let's put it that way. We don't have any information on what they arrived at on their own. That wasn't released. They gave us what they gave us, and so we have to work with mostly civilian data here. Well, let me add another kind of an intriguing wrinkle here. These kind of objects were tracked over the Washington, D.C. area in 1952. The same type of behavior was picked up on radar, where the objects loitered, moving at 30, 35 miles an hour, and suddenly would accelerate to terrific bursts. And that was picked up by National Air Traffic Tracking people at the time. So the behavior about the history of the UFO subject.
Do you think these things could be probes, robots, and have no life forms on board them?
Oh, that's eminently possible. There have been reports throughout UFO history of very small UFOs, mini UFOs, if you will, just a few feet across, or even rarely several inches across. So those obviously weren't being inhabited by living beings unless you postulate intelligent insects or something like that. So the conclusion is that if you can't explain them prosaically, that these were unmanned, sort of drones of some type.
Well, thank you, Rob. It's certainly fascinating and intriguing. We're going to try our best to get to the bottom of it.
Been a pleasure. Yeah, let me know if you get to the bottom of it. I'd be the first one interested.
We certainly will. Thank you. Well, this is fascinating. You've got the AWAC plane circling the sky for 4 hours. Radar has confirmed there were 10 fighter jets in the area. 2 split off and went southwest to where our unidentified flying object is.
It could be military aircraft being tested as something really top secret, technology that we don't know about, or it could be something that the military was chasing.
This is getting really interesting. Coming up, we compare other UFOs caught on radar.
This is, to all intents and purposes, official government footage of a UFO.
And in the Stephenville case, the hunt continues for the truth.
We owe it to these people to find out exactly what went on. They deserve an explanation.
The scale of the Stephenville UFO sighting is staggering. A mile-wide craft passing silently over a small Texan town, witnessed by at least 50 separate people, including a police officer and a pilot.
And then all of a sudden it burst into a flame. Looked like it was kind of a dirty white flame.
Of F-16 fighter jets, 2 of which peeled away, allegedly in pursuit of the UFO.
The radar data is even maybe better than pictures, since it does show large objects that replicated the motions of what the witnesses reported.
And it's not the crossing the sky, but then shockingly, it descends towards the ocean and appears to submerge.
What was splashed? Mark bearing and range.
No wreckage was found, but new corroborating radar evidence has emerged. The radar data was captured on the same date as the submerging sphere in the information center on USS Omaha.
781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, floated in.
It shows the aircraft carrier surrounded by not just one, but a swarm of anomalous objects, suggesting the sphere was only a small part of a larger UFO event. Significantly, it was close to where the now infamous USS Nimitz UFO was also captured on radar and filmed in November 2004.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Well, I think the most fundamental point about all of this is that This is US Navy footage. We've always known that pilots have seen UFOs, but usually governments deny this sort of thing. Now, some of the pilots and indeed radar operators have spoken out. So for the first time, UFOs, whatever they are, they're real.
In the case of Stephenville, the radar data revealed another clue. The US Air Force had a Sentry plane airborne in the same location and in the same time window. We have got this AWAC plane flying for hours and hours, circling overhead. We've got 10 fighter jets, 2 of them peeling off and heading southwest as though they're chasing something. And we have got over 50, maybe hundreds of eyewitness accounts saying they saw something really strange in the sky that day.
Nick, how invaluable is quality evidence in a UFO investigation?
It's all about the evidence. Certainly in government, we take a data-led approach to UFO research and investigation, and analysis is key. Yes, people's stories, what they've witnessed is important, but it's actually analyzing the data that is so key to trying to find a solution to all of this. With regard to the Nimitz sighting and the other Navy sightings, it's not just the footage, but the radar.
Track 781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, closing in.
And is there a particular significance when evidence is being captured by the military because they're using the latest, most advanced technology?
Where you've got something that was demonstrably taken, for example, from a military aircraft with forward-looking infrared cameras or whatever, it's authentic. And also, as you say, yes, the military tend to have very often this cutting-edge technology. So whether you're talking about the cameras or whether you're talking about other sensors, you can get ahead of the game a bit.
And in terms of military sightings, there was a very interesting one in Puerto Rico in 2013.
Yes, this was actually captured from a Homeland Security aircraft and tracked on radar. It shows an object traveling pretty fast, very low, over the land and then over the sea. And a couple of really, really bizarre things happen. Firstly, this object at one point goes into the ocean and then comes out again. At one point, it appears to split into 2. The important point about this footage is that the people who were there at the time operating this equipment, who knew about all the issues with the kit, they're still impressed by this.
But this just adds more credibility to the fact that we can't explain what was seen.
Yes, it's multiple sightings across multiple different systems. And sometimes as well, of course, not necessarily here, but other times with the Nimitz, you always look for these multiple data sources independently corroborating each other.
Why has it been released?
Basically, these people said, look, this happened. We need to start thinking about this. Scientists need to start studying this phenomenon. We need to stop sweeping this sort of thing under the carpet. And we need to say, look, something's going on. We should be finding out what. This is, to all intents and purposes, official government footage of a UFO.
That was going so fast, and it's really curious. Do you think it could have been a drone?
Potentially, I mean, one thought I've had is, we see these insiders leaking things to the military. This was leaked by US Homeland Security. How do we know someone more senior in government isn't leaking these videos because they want people to report things because it's potentially enemy technology?
And I'm curious as to why military authorities have been willing to acknowledge incidents like the Puerto Rico UAP sighting of 2013. And latterly, the United States Navy pilot sightings from the USS Nimitz, and yet changed their story when it came to Stephenville. First denying there was a military presence in the area, but then, when it cropped upon radar, admitting it. But where do we go from here?
Well, the fact of the matter is Stephenville still remains a mystery. We have still got a mass sighting. More than 50 people saw something. I don't know what they saw.
How are we going to find our truth in this investigation?
Well, there's one person we need to speak to, one person who might hold the key.
Coming up, Eyewitness Police Constable Gayton provides details of his own unique encounter.
They were moving around at a very fast rate of speed. It wasn't flares, it wasn't the reflection. Lights is what I saw.
But his extraordinary testimony takes the case in an unexpected direction.
His story doesn't match the accounts from other witnesses.
It's like he's seeing a completely different thing, isn't it?
I believe that he saw something that he can't explain.
We're on a mission to uncover the truth about what the people of Stephenville, Texas, really saw streaking across the early evening sky on the 8th of January, 2008. The UFO was described by eyewitnesses as a vast mothership engaged in a game of cat and mouse with 2 F-16 fighter jets.
They was in hot pursuit trying to catch it, but they couldn't get close to it.
Radar data supports the eyewitness testimony, proving the Air Force did have fighter jets and a control aircraft in the sky at the time of the incident.
An airborne warning and control aircraft was orbiting for the entire 4 hours.
But denials and U-turns by the military have left the people of Stephenville, whose lives have been forever changed, desperate for answers. Okay, so Sarah, the people of Stephenville in Texas said they saw a vast spaceship in the sky. 1 mile long, half a mile wide, traveling at speeds of up to 3,000 miles per hour. They've been belittled, they've been ridiculed, they've been besmirched. We're trying to prove for them that this actually happened. Our problem is we've come up against no physical evidence whatsoever, no photographs, no videos.
But it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. 50 people, more than 50 people, have come forward and said they saw strange things in the sky. I mean, it's highly unlikely that the whole town got together and decided they were going to make up a conspiracy theory just for UFO tourism.
We've got one more eyewitness to help us prove that this actually happened. Leroy, it's Craig and Sarah here.
Hello there, how are you guys?
We're trying to prove what happened in Stephenville. Can you convince us that it happened and tell us your story?
Back, it was 2008. I lived just outside of a little town 12 miles south of Stephenville. I lived up on a hill. I remember that day specifically because it was my wife's birthday. After we ate, walked out to my car outside, which was parked in the driveway, to retrieve my credit card. As I'm walking back, just something caught my attention. It was off to the southwest sky. I noticed like an orb. This thing was huge, and it was reddish, orange, yellowish color. I would say kind of like when you see flowing lava from a volcano. I didn't know what it was. I was kind of at all. I walked inside, and my wife and children were waiting for me, and I mentioned to her, I wanted her to grab the video camera. Well, she kind of laughed at me and said, "Oh, you probably just saw a plane." Well, it wasn't a plane. This was much larger. So I walk outside, and my boy at the time, I believe he was 8 years old, Ryan, went outside with me. My boy is looking up at the sky, and he's saying, "Dad, look, 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 look." And I look up, and I see these bright, I'd call them fluorescent colored lights. They were coming on, flashing, coming off. They were moving around at a very fast rate of speed. One would appear here, and then it'd go off and it'd appear here. And they were doing this kind of like somewhat a formation. Anyway, I don't know what it was. They were pretty high up in the sky. They were not what I had just seen prior, not the same color. All of a sudden, they stop, and they like stopped moving around. And like a school of fish, these things shot off in a direction to the east, and they were gone. And they were traveling so fast, and I'm trying to, gather myself and, what is it that I'm seeing? The only thing I could hear is my kid, asking me questions, nagging on me. "What is this, Dad? Is this a spaceship?" And I said, "Yeah, you don't tell nobody."
Leroy, forgive me, could it have been fireworks? Because the way you've just described that, it kind of sounds like rockets, firework rockets.
No, sir. No, I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I'm not the dumbest either. And no, it certainly wasn't fireworks. It wasn't flares. It wasn't the reflection. Lights is what I saw.
I want to get clear, because we've had other witnesses say this was one gigantic craft, but what you're saying is this was several separate craft.
Okay, as far as craft, I will not use that word because I did not see a craft. I saw an orb initially, disappeared, and saw another one. So I don't know if it was something that broke into several pieces, but I did not see a craft. I'd love to know what it was. I think somebody out there knows. I think our military are aware, even though they did initially deny it for 2 weeks.
Do you honestly think the government could cover up something as big as this? Do you not think perhaps it's just military technology?
It could be military technology. I'm not going to argue that fact. What I will argue is that a typical human being like you and I are not going to be able to withstand these G-forces.
Perhaps they weren't manned craft. Perhaps they were
so.
probes or robots.
That was my thought. I mean, it could have been something that was unmanned. Very possible. I used to not really believe that there was something from out of this world, but it kind of opened up my mind, and I think now that it was something that wasn't from here. Whatever it is that I saw, I don't think I'll ever really know.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there you go, Sarah. I think Leroy was a really compelling witness. He told that story really, really well. And he looks like the kind of guy that doesn't mess. He doesn't make these kind of things up.
No, I agree with that. I think what was quite compelling is that he was fearful about talking about it. He told his young lad not to tell anyone else, and he's got nothing to gain by telling his story. But what I am curious about is his story doesn't match the accounts from other witnesses.
Sarah is correct. There are discrepancies between some of the eyewitness accounts. Pilot Steve Allen described one vast mothership.
The ship was massive. It appeared to be about a half a mile wide and probably a mile long.
But Ricky Sorrells, the hunter who didn't want to start an interstellar war, he also saw a massive craft over his head.
And if you look at the trees, it's right here. I mean, it's 300 foot up, right here.
But Leroy, he describes multiple brightly lit orbs behaving randomly.
I see these bright lights. They were coming on, flashing, coming off, and they were moving around at a very fast rate of speed.
It's like he's seeing a completely different thing, isn't it?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think, based on the evidence we've got so far and based on what we've heard, I believe that something happened, something was seen. But what's kind of happened over the years is it's kind of got embellished. So it was likely that a lot of people did see these lights, but the truth has kind of got muddied in this story over the years. But I believe that he saw something that he can't explain.
In this fascinating UFO case, we've listened to extraordinary witness testimony. We've gone deep into the data and reviewed the radar and other technical evidence. But now, it's time to put our cards on the table. Was the UFO encounter over Stephenville, Texas, 13 There's no physical evidence whatsoever. Now, what they saw, I don't know, but I can't say that they saw a UFO. So I've got to say, case unproven.
I agree on a lot of your points. I don't think we're ever going to be able to explain what happened in Stephenville. So based on that, I'm going to say object unexplained, but case closed.
Okay, but the truth is out there, and we move on. Which may be imminent.